Everyone, today I'm back with my favorite guest and favorite person to talk to about anything deep, philosophical, spiritual, or whatever you call it, right? So he's my favorite person to talk to. So back again, Dr. Jamil, if you want one of the best conversations, masterclass, whatever you want to call it, about commitment, what commitment is, there's a video posted on my YouTube or podcast. Go look it up. You will be, I mean, I can't say the value that provides. So I would highly recommend that one. And I hope, and I expect, not hope, I expect the same thing with this one because it always goes that way. So today we're going to talk about self-love. This is something I came out of a conversation I was having with a friend, and I was going to post a video, but then Dr. Jamil, I feel like, can really go deep into it and really get people to really understand what self-love means. So that's what I'm going to have. But before we get into that, first of all, if people don't know who Dr. Jamil is, he's a high-level coach. He also is an energy healer, and he also does free master classes for people every month, once a month. There's next Tuesday, there's one coming out. So anything that Dr. Jamil does, I would say it's highly worth attending if you have the time to do it. But Dr. Jamil will share that stuff. Like I said, energy healing is a big thing with him. We did another podcast with it. So if you want details on that, go listen to the podcast. And if you want to seek him out for that one, great. And coaching, you listen to him, you obviously will see what a great coach he is. So I would highly recommend that. Well, with that, Dr. Jamil, kind of share anything else I left out, and any other details I missed.
Thank you so much, Raju. It's always wonderful to be with you. And this is our fourth episode. So we're 4 for 4. And I've loved our previous three conversations. And just for our audience listening, first of all, thank you for being here. And it's always fun to engage and with the community. And as it relates to these previous three conversations we had, the first two are about science and spirituality and kind of how to unify those. And the third one was about commitment. And I have myself listened to each of those three conversations so many times, and people I've shared it with were just blown away by what you and I discussed. And I think they're so valuable. And there's a comment that you made that I want to point out for our listeners and give a different perspective on it. You said, as it related to my class coming up on Tuesday on communication mastery, if you can make the time, if you can find the time. And so for our listeners, this applies not just for this class I've got coming up, but for let's say the previous three conversations Raju and I had, or anything else, got nothing to do with me, anything else in your world. It's not about can you find the time. It's will you prioritize it enough to make it happen?
Mhm.
And finding the time makes it sound like it's not up to you, like it's kind of passive. But if I look at the calendar and I say, okay, this is what my Tuesday, my Friday, my whatever looks like, this is what I have scheduled right now. Is what I am missing out on because of my current schedule going to cost me in the long term? Because this is so important, but I don't have time for it. Well, what
Mhm.
if I rescheduled something? What if I moved something around to make it happen? Like if your life was on the line, could you find a way to schedule it? And the answer is yes. And so it's interesting that we often, if you push past a little bit of discomfort, a little bit of hesitation, on the other side of that, there's all this possibility of what can be created for you. And so, all that to be said, we've had some exceptional conversations thus far. And I know this one will be the next edition in that. And if you haven't heard the previous three, or if you only heard one or two of them, it will serve you to go back and listen either again or listen for the first time because we're drowning in information. There's so many things available now with books and podcasts and videos and whatever else. It's hard to know who to listen to. It's hard to know what information is actually good quality. And so many of us, we drop into this like analysis paralysis phase of there's so many things I could spend my time doing and I don't know what to do, so I don't do anything. What comes to mind is I have a good friend of mine loves to read, but he told me not too long ago, he's told me this multiple times. So the first time he told me this a couple of years back, and he said he's a lawyer, and he said there's so many books that I would like to read, but I don't know which one is the right one to read first. So then 8 months go by and he hasn't read any of them. And I find that interesting because it's like you're letting just starting be the enemy of becoming great.
Great. Yep.
So going back to what I said a moment ago, I'm not saying that I'm the right person to listen to, but what I am saying is these conversations that Raju and I have been so extraordinary in terms of the depth we reach in a short period of time and the nuggets of gold and the wisdom that we each share in these conversations that I think it'll be worth your time to check it out. And only you will know if that's true, and you'll only know if you actually give it a shot. And so I lovingly challenge you with that. And back to you, Raju.
Awesome. No, that's a great way to put it. I was just having that conversation with somebody about something business wise, and she was talking about, hey, some people hesitate or they say they don't have the money, and your point is right. That's what I told her. Like, no, they don't find the value. If there's value, they'll find the money. That's what I've learned. I don't force it. You can't force anything. Just share the information, obviously, and then if they see the value, they'll see it. Yeah, you can do things. You can talk. You can actually ask the right questions to show them the value. All that. But that's why you might need to, you would want to, attend the communication course to understand how you're communicating can change what's being received or what you're listening to. Well, anyway, that's a separate, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
It's a great segue to start before I throw it back to you, which is, we talked about self-love. That's what the theme of today is, given what we just talked about. Can you and will you choose to love yourself enough to prioritize the things that'll help you create the life that you want? You telling yourself, I don't have the time, I don't have the money, I don't have the whatever to justify this, why you should stay where you're at, when where you're at, you're not happy with.
Mm-hmm.
The way Les Brown puts it is that's spiritual suicide. Like, why do that to yourself? Raju's spot on when he says it's not, when his friend said, oh, I can't find the money. It's like, no, you can't find the value. Because if you saw that, like at least what the talk I'm giving, it's free. And so all it is show up. And it's like, from that mindset, can you find the value for you to show up, for you to love yourself enough to give yourself that gift to improve all these different areas of your life? And that's whether it's me, whether it's a book, whether it's a seminar you might go to, whether it's hiring someone you want to work with. Are you thrilled with the way your life is right now? And if the answer is no, whether overall and or in one specific area, what are you doing about it? There's an old expression, I think it's Bruce Lee, but regardless, either if you want it, you find a way. If you don't, you find an excuse. Mm-hmm. And what if you make it that simple? I'm buying into a story about why I can't have the life that I say that I want. When did you decide that story was true? And someone goes like, what do you mean decide? Well, who else decided if it wasn't you? It's your life. Like, when did you buy into the story, whether someone else told it to you or you just kind of through a limiting belief about yourself, you just agreed with it? This isn't possible. I can't make this happen. You will shock yourself when you push past that and you show yourself what you're actually capable of. You have unlimited potential. But the thing is, most of us never step into it. I remember, as a closing statement here, I remember hearing what Tony Robbins said at some point. I heard them, and he said, what people can do is extraordinary. Often what people do is disappointing.
We do. I mean, yeah, that would be a completely different. I can say something else, but I know that'll delve into completely into a different conversation, and we won't get into self-love, which I want to get into. So with that being said, hey, go listen to what Dr. Jamil just said again. I would highly recommend it because, I fall into the trap myself many times about the value versus what I want, right? Anyway, that's a separate conversation. What we'll get into is about self-love. And I've gotten into this deeply a lot. And the reason I wanted Dr. Jamil here is to have that, I don't know, conversation that somebody will challenge me or go more in depth than what I can get into. So what I've learned, Dr. Jamil, with self-love, what is the more I love myself, respect myself, honor myself, more I honor, respect, love others. And that seems like many times most people do not understand when they talk about self-love. They think it's more selfish. Oh, I'm being self-centered, or more like, I don't know what the word to use. They more think, hey, you're going to be detrimental to others if you love yourself, that you don't care about others. The analogy I can give is, I was listening to some podcast or something, I forgot. The heart, science says heart keeps the most oxygenated blood, or the best blood, essentially, and it distributes the rest of the blood. But then if it doesn't do that, it doesn't take care of the heart, then the rest of the body doesn't work. Mm-hmm. So that's the analogy, I guess I would say. So in your words, in your thought process, what is self-love? How do you define it?
Yeah. So I think the second question there is the one I'm going to stick with, which is, how do I define it? Mm-hmm. So I don't pretend to know what it is, in the sense that what I'm sharing is never the truth. What I'm sharing is a truth. What I'm sharing is a perspective. What I'm sharing is an invitation to a possibility that is available for you. And so for all of our listeners, try on what I'm saying. And I'm going to preface everything I'm about to share with: self-love is the foundation for all of the success you would ever want, both personally and professionally. So some of you might be listening thinking, all right, but why are we talking about this? I want to grow my business. This is the key. Some people might be saying, why are we talking about this? I want to make my body healthier. This is the key. Some people might be saying, why are we talking about any of this? My relationship's like suffering right now. This is the key. And so this is the key to everything, because what is the common denominator in all the different areas of your life? So you've got your money, you've got your career, you've got your relationship, you've got your family, you've got whatever else. What's the common denominator? You. And so you are at the root of all of those. And so if you can enhance that relationship you have with yourself, everything else is improved. And so I'm going to begin by defining some terms, and I'm going to do this in a way that is potentially deeper than most people take it. And I ask our audience to just sit in this with me, sit in the possibility of what I'm sharing, and try it on. So self-love, and we might say, well, what is that? For me, I'm first going to break up those two words. What is self? Depending on how you define that, well, it'll be either very expanded or limited in your experience. And so when I think of self, I don't consider self me. I make a distinction between me and I. Me, from my paradigm, is my ego. Me is my individuated sense of self. Me is what I call Jamil. In the sense of, in my paradigm, speaking to you, me would be Raju. But then there's I. And I is, depending on what you want to call it, I is the presence. I is the self. It's the soul. It's life itself. It's the piece of divinity within you. Whatever you want to call that, it's the thing that is the consciousness, the awareness. All of your experiences occur within it. Prior to you were born, you didn't have a name. You were given a name. But what was the you there before the name? What's the you before the personality? What's the you before the beliefs were installed? What's the you before the thoughts? What's the you before the identity? Identity just means repeated being. So it's who you repeatedly be is your identity. It's not a static thing that's unchanging. You could change it every day, every moment you could change it. So when I think of self, to me, it's that animating force. It's that underlying presence. The thing is, when I've tapped into that presence within me, that is me, or that is I, language gets complicated with this, but we're trying to use language which is rooted in duality to describe oneness, and you can't do that. But in order to have a conversation, I'm going to do my best. And so you've got this presence that is me, and that presence is the first thing. Everything comes from that presence. It animates, it comes from within it. But that presence within me is the same presence within you. That which is metaphorically behind my eyes looking out, it's the same thing that's behind your eyes looking out. And we create this false sense of division and separation. We're like, I'm Jamil and you're Raju, and that's Mary over there, and that's Muhammad, and that's Cindy, and that's Derek. And we play in this kind of superficial external side of life of there's that old expression, don't judge a book by its cover. In the same way, it's like we do that. We judge based on your physical appearance. We judge based on different qualities and attributes. We judge based on beliefs. We judge based on language. We judge based on all these things on the surface. But if you go beyond that to like what is that animating force, that essence, it's exactly the same in all beings, in all life. So when I think of self-love, that's the self I'm referring to. So when I think of self-love, the more of that I have for me, the more I have for you. So self-love is the ultimate form of spirituality. Now, self is, again, like in my paradigm, that's like spirit, that's soul, that's self. Then there's love. People define that in so many different ways. I have a poetic way of defining love. When I say I love you, what I mean is in your presence, I experience God. That's what I mean when I say I love you. When I look into your eyes, I'm home. And I can feel that with an animal. I can feel that with a human being. I can feel that with a tree. Because the animating force is the same. The surface looks different. But in our previous science spirituality conversation, not to go too deep into it, but just one aspect of it, whether it's a quantum physics perspective, whether it's an ancient Buddhic perspective, or whether it's a Hindu, they all get to eventually the same point of one energy, one essence, one consciousness manifesting itself in an infinite number of ways. And so with that in mind, self, we've got this divinity, this spirit. Love, we've got the experience of that. It's like me experiencing it within you, me experiencing it in the tree, me experiencing it in the moment. So when I put it together now, self-love is not some egoic thing of like narcissism of like, I am better than everything else. It's not that, at least in my paradigm. Self-love is essentially being in love with life, but life is everything. And so the more I love me, the more I love you. If I'm actually understanding who me is. Like the more I love what I actually am, that same thing is you. So if I love me, I'm never going to hurt you. And so when people say self-love is selfish, I think you brought that up either at the beginning of the recording or prior to us recording that somebody said that to you. To me, in this context, being selfish is the most selfless thing you can do. Because by filling your own cup up first, you can give from the overflow forever. I want you to imagine like a thermos, let's say, and you don't fill it up. So you only have whatever you have. And you want to be generous. You want to help. And people are asking you, can you help me? Can you help me? Can you help me? And they're taking from you and you're giving and they're doing all these things. And now you give, you give, you give. Some people try to take whatever it is. And there's a distinction there. You can't take from me if I'm giving. Right? But some people might try to steal, whatever it might be. But the point being, you give, you give, you give, and you keep running low on your reserves, let's say. And now you get to a point where you barely have enough for yourself, but people still want help because there's always going to be people who need help because of just the sheer amount of people that there are. And if you include like animals and other plants and beings, that there's going to be forever people are going to need help. So with that in mind, at some point, you don't have anything left to give, whether it's your money, your time, your attention. That's a limited, finite resource that you're going to have in this lifetime. And so if you focus on only giving to others and not yourself because you think that's the right thing to do, that leads to burnout. That leads to exhaustion. That leads to, at a short period of time, now you're one of the people who needs help because you can't help yourself anymore because you gave it all away. And people might think that's noble, or they might think that's like being a martyr. That's not helping anybody because the people that you helped in that short term, it's like me saying I helped 100 people by giving everything I had. Well, great, but now I need help, and there's tens of thousands of people that I'm never going to be able to help because I gave everything to these 100. Now, what would happen if I gave to myself first? In that thermos metaphor, now my thermos is filled up and I keep overflowing it. So it's overflowing, but the water that's overflowing out in this example, that's the metaphorical help. It's the life that I can give from the overflow completely. So now I have a lifetime of service. I have a lifetime of giving. I have a lifetime of loving as a verb, like love, like an expression in action, right? And now people will receive my love forever. whether it's my energy, my money, my time, whatever way I can contribute to them. But I'm also taking care of myself along the way. There's that old metaphor, everyone's heard it. You're on a plane and they say, if there's an
Yep.
emergency and the oxygen mask drops, put yours on before you help somebody else. Why? Because if you've got a kid, two kids, three kids, a spouse, whoever it is, some random people around that you want to help, you're of no good to anybody if the second person in you pass out. Now you're a burden. Your body is just laying on somebody and now they can't get up. But if you put yours on first, assuming the thing is working, you can help forever. As long as this thing's in the air, you can help. And so that to me, I'm going to keep it at that first. First, defining the terms. What is self-love? It's not coming from some space of like, I am better than somebody else and I'm number one and I'm going to put me first. In that context, it's not that. What it is, though, is I am the center of my universe and you are the center of yours. There's 8 billion-ish people, and we're all the center of our own reality. We all live in different realities because the world doesn't occur the same way to every person. You could have your family in the home with you, and even though that's my husband, that's my wife, that's my kid, we've been together our whole life, they still don't see life the same way you do. So why do you think the stranger down the street sees it the same way you do? And so because nobody sees it the same way you do, you're the center of your universe. And I said earlier, you're the common denominator. So if you love you, at least in the way I'm describing it, you're going to be kind with yourself. You're going to be compassionate. You're going to be forgiving. You're going to be all these wonderful things and qualities that most people would associate rather with these things. But if you're being it with yourself, you'll be it with others. The external world is a mirror in the sense that if I'm judging somebody else for a way they look or a way they show up or whatever they're doing, I'm judging them because I judge me for that. But if I can have the self-compassion, the self-respect, the self-love, etc., for me, I won't judge them. Now, I can judge the behavior, but I won't judge them. I can love the person and hate the behavior. I can love the person and recognize people aren't their behavior. Because there's things that I've done, there's ways of being that I've been, there's ways I've shown up in the world in the past that I was ignorant. I didn't know what I didn't know. Knowing what I know now, I wouldn't act that way. So is it because I'm a bad person? No, it's because in the moment I didn't know what I didn't know. In the moment I was afraid, I was in pain, I was ignorant. I thought that was a good idea. We've all had these experiences. So it's not about being perfect. It's just about learning from your past to make a better present and a better future. And just like I've been a certain way, done something that I'm not proud of, so have you. And so is that person that you're judging. But just because in the moment you're not maybe doing anything that you're not proud of, they are, but you've done that before. So I have this expression that I use with my clients all the time, and I share it with everyone listening. I call it just like me. And what I mean by that is no matter what I'm seeing, whether it's someone's acting in a really bold, courageous, generous way, just like me, I've done that before. But then somebody over here is acting in a really nasty, ignorant, fearful way. And I go, oh, just like me. I've done that before. And so no one's some static, unchanging thing. We're all a process. We're all a verb. We're all in motion. And so by me loving me in every aspect of that word as a verb in action, I will love everybody else because what is the self? It reminds me of I think his name is Sri Ramana Maharshi, and he was a Hindu yogi, Hindu sage. And somebody said, Master, how do we deal with others? And he said, there are no others. And that's what he's getting at. Everything is the self. So by loving me, I love you because we're the same. We're one. Now, that is not the general definition that you get from the average person because the average person is, by really no fault of their own, we've been conditioned this way. We're so rooted in separation and division and fear that it's always like us versus them. It's always good guys versus bad guys. It's always all these divisive ways of seeing the world that isolates things versus unifies them. And to me, health is about wholeness. And so it's not just health in a body, it's health in the body of humanity, if you want to call it that. It's the community of humanity. How do you create health? You need wholeness. How do you create wholeness? So you have to stop the division and the separation. You look differently than I do. You come from a different place than I do. You might speak different languages than I do. what if I celebrated that? What if that's beautiful? What if it's like, wow, like you don't look the way I do. That's pretty cool. What's that interesting outfit you've got on? In my culture, we don't wear that. Tell me more about that.
Mhm.
Oh, like how do you say this? Like the word that you've got for this situation. Oh, that's so cool. Versus my way is the right way.
Mhm.
Because if my way is the right way, everybody else is wrong.
Mhm.
But if my way is a way, and there's an infinite number of ways, my way works for me. It might not work for you. And your way seems to work for you. It might not work for me. But let's talk about it because there's aspects of your way that might benefit me because
Mhm.
my way might not be working for me and vice versa. And so in my mind, when we can bring the unity, um, when we can let go of rather the separation, self-love is just like a natural unfolding. It's what rises to the top. It's like if you have a beach ball and you stick it underwater, what happens? It shoots back up.
Mhm.
Now, what happens if you really try to hold it down? You have to pay attention because it starts to move under your hands. Like it's doing everything it can to get back up.
Mhm.
So self-love isn't something that you really have to strive to create. It's what happens when you stop blocking it.
Mhm.
It's your default nature. Your default nature is love. Your default nature is oneness. Your default nature is not. I remember my mom tells this story that she was so proud of, and I've never shared this on a podcast before. And so I was 4 years old, 5 years old. I'm in like pre-K, kindergarten, one of the two. And I met, it's funny, my name is Jamil, and my first like great friend, his name was Jamal. So the Jamil and Jamal.
Mhm.
And um, he was a black boy, and we became great friends.
Mhm.
And after that, I met him, and
Mhm.
we had a great day together. And I come back home, and my mom goes, "Did you make any friends today?" And
Mhm.
I said, "Yeah, I made this amazing friend." And
Mhm.
she goes, "Oh, what's his name?" And I said, "Oh, his name is Jamal." And she
Mhm.
goes, "Well, what is he?" And I didn't understand the question.
Mhm.
And then my mom said, "Well, is he white? Is he black? Is he this? Is he that?" And I was like, "I don't know."
Mhm.
And why didn't I know? Because I didn't pay attention to that.
Mhm.
Like racism and things like that, that's learned. It's
Mhm.
not like innate. Now, the mind, at least I'll say the mind, the brain, whatever we're going to define it as, there is a factor of the mind is evolved to recognize differences.
Mhm.
So as an adult who's discerning, I can look at you and say, oh, okay, you look this way. And
Mhm.
there's certain evolutionary kind of, let's say, safety mechanisms, because maybe in the past, a certain tribe looked a certain way. And if I didn't recognize they look different than I do, they might not like me. They might attack me because
Mhm.
my people, we all look similar. And so there's value in being discerning. There's value in recognizing differences. But the racism side of it is the moment we make it such a prejudice that we have all these preconceived notions about this person, this race, these beings, without knowing anything about them. And so there I was, 4 or 5 years old, and my mom was like, "Oh, what is he?" And I didn't know because I just saw like a soul. I just saw a beautiful guy. I just saw a friend. I just saw someone I had fun with.
Mhm.
I knew his name. I knew his smile. I knew his heart. I didn't put those words to it, obviously, at 4 or 5, but I didn't know what my mom was asking me. And I'm not saying, that right now, go do that, but I am saying that's your nature. And in a way, you've been conditioned out of it. And so, what if you could get back to that? What if you can combine your discerning mind, your intellect, everything you've learned, with this sense of compassion, love, respect for all of life? And if you do that, that to me is self-love.
Mhm. Well, there's a lot said there. So one of the things, there's a lot of things. I would say go listen to it again because one of the things I was going to ask, he already covered, Dr. Jamil already covered, was about judgment, separation, you feel or someone feels, is that lack of acknowledging the other person is me, or let's say me, I'm trying to say this person is different than me, then I'm only looking at the exterior, not really the true essence of that person. I'm just looking at the culture, color of the skin, whatever the circumstances, right? So that's a great point. I would say current environment, if you start truly looking at ourselves first and understanding we are them, they are us, Even if you go to brain science, the factor is, like Dr. Jamil shared, it's a fact that 8 billion people have 8 billion realities. No two are the same. And our brains are built to protect us. So there's a body imbalance and all that stuff going on. But that's a different podcast, so we'll not get into it. But the point there is really that part. When I see people, one of the things I will share, sometimes I see people sharing this about, I'm self-love, I'm taking care of myself, all that. They post it as if it's somewhat of a accomplishment or something to say, hey, we're now going to self-love. Where I feel or where I see something missing there is, doesn't mean that you're just loving yourself. You understand you are acknowledging everybody else too, love them too. Then you'll truly love yourself. Then you will, once you love yourself, then you will automatically, you don't need practice self-love. You just there automatically. Not that I'm not saying, like, for example, me, I've gotten deep into it, but I'm not saying I won't have bouts of questioning myself, whatever, because whenever I see somebody bad, I know that's in me. No,
Yeah.
that's already automatically detected. So anyway, go ahead. You were going to share something about that.
Yeah, just to make this practical, here's an example of how self-love is loving others. So I mentioned earlier, you want to grow your business, you want to make more money, you want to help your relationship, your health, and I said this is the key. And you might be saying, how? Now you might have already gotten it from what I shared, and maybe it wasn't as obvious to you. And so if it wasn't, I'll make it more obvious here. So who you're being in the moment influences everything that you do. So if I am focusing on loving myself, and the question might be, if I was being loving to myself in this moment, what would I be doing? What would I be saying? So maybe right now you're angry with yourself. You're pissed off with yourself. You're shaming yourself. You're guilting yourself. And then you ask this question. If I wanted to be loving with myself right now, what would I say? What would I do? And you find that an answer will show up. An answer will show up all the time. And it might be a practice to do. It might be something to say to yourself. But notice that very rarely do you the way you would speak to a child in need, the way you would speak to your best friend when they were really in a rough spot, you almost never speak to yourself that way.
Mm-hmm.
Like the way you speak to yourself, if you spoke to anyone else like that, nobody would want to be around you. And that's the way for most of us, most of the time we operate. We're
Mm-hmm.
so hard on ourselves because
Mm-hmm.
we've got this preconceived notion that wherever we learned it, that we're not enough as we are.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to be perfect. We have to be better. So we berate ourselves, we shame ourselves if our performance or our results aren't up to par.
Right.
Whatever that imaginary bar is, that line that we're trying to satisfy, A, it's never ending. It always keeps getting moved up.
Yes.
So you never get there. But B, it's all made up. And so if I choose to be more loving with me, so let's imagine in this scenario, imagine in this case, the scenario I'm saying is true for you. So there I am with my partner, and prior to seeing this person, I'm really angry, frustrated, pissed off at myself for a variety of reasons. Then I show up and I see my partner, or then I show up and I go to some conference, a networking event. Then I show up and I'm with my kids, whatever it might be. In that pissed off, frustrated, angry, whatever state, how am I likely to listen?
Mm-hmm.
How am I to them? How am I likely to speak with them? Am I going to be present or am I going to be distracted? Am I going to be receptive and calm and peaceful? Or am I going to be more impatient? And am I going to be focusing on anything I could get pissed off about? So something's not the way I want it to be.
Mm-hmm.
I can't believe you did this thing. We talked about this, and then I get really upset. So if I focus on how can I love myself, it brings me into the best state possible in the sense that I've taken care of me so I can take care of others.
Mm-hmm.
But now I show up to my partner, to my business, to my whatever, other people in a very grounded space, in a space of how can I help? How can I serve? In a space of being ready to listen. How are you? What's going on in your world? But if I'm so like basically metaphorically drowning in all the stuff in my world.
Mhm.
When you start telling me about your stuff that you're struggling with, that's too much. I don't want to hear that because I'm barely floating by in my own world. But
Mhm.
if I'm on a boat, if I'm on dry land and I'm good, and now you've got your situation, I can help. It's like I can pull you out of the water when you're drowning, when I've taken care of me. But if I'm drowning and you're drowning next to me and we're just both complaining about what we're drowning about, that's not going to help.
Mhm.
And so self-love to me, make it practical. If I was being loving to me right now, what would I do? It might be I'm going to go for a walk because I was about to say something to
Mhm.
my partner, to my kids, to my business partner, to networking, whatever. I was about to say something that I can't take back. It was
Mhm.
going to be hurtful, disrespectful, and in hindsight, I was going to regret that. So I'm going to go for a walk and then I'll let them know, hey, I need to go for a walk right now. When I come back, I'd love to continue this conversation. And then
Mhm.
I go. That might be it. It might be I'm going to go to bed earlier today.
Mhm.
It might be I'm going to eat a healthier meal. It might be I'm going to journal. It might be I'm going to watch a show that I like on TV or on Netflix or on whatever. It might be I'm going to meditate. It might be I'm going to go for a run. I'm going to exercise. But whatever it is for you, it might be I'm going to just have a conversation with somebody and ask them, hey, I've got a lot on my heart right now, and I just need to let it out. Would you mind just holding some space for me? It's got nothing to do with you. I just need to share this. That's a beautiful act of self-love because you're giving yourself that gift and they're also giving you a gift. So in that same way, if you were being loving to you right now, what would you be doing? What would you be saying? But then once you do that, you'll start to feel better and you're in a more receptive, open, grounded space. So you will be of more service to everyone around you. So somebody might say, how would self-love make me more money? If you're only focusing on making money, you're focusing on an outcome. You're focusing on an effect. You're focusing on a consequence, but you're not focusing on what creates it. So if I want more money, but all I focus on is why aren't people giving me money, I'm missing the fact of why does money transfer? Money transfers because there's an exchange of value. So my focus shouldn't be on money. My focus should be on first, how much money do I want to make? Get clear on that. And then shift to what value can I provide for what amount of people that would generate that amount of money. And then all my effort goes into being of value.
Mhm.
Hard to be of value and think in that way if I'm so in this drowning state, if I'm in the state of fear and scarcity and it's all about me and how can I take care of me, that to me is going to stop you from being as of value to others as you could be because you're focusing on you, you're not focusing on them. And so when you and it's interesting actually as I say that because I know what I mean by that, but that might be confusing to some people. So because I said before, like we're all one, right? So and at the same time, this is where the language gets weird about it. On the one hand, yes, we're all one, and by taking care of me, I take care of you. And on the other hand, it's also true that in order for me to help myself, I have to help you.
Mhm.
And so in that way, it's almost like they're both true at the same time. And so by you focusing on you and getting into the best state possible, now you have the presence of mind to say, what do my customers, what do my clients really need right now? How could I give that to them? How could I make their lives easier? Because I'm not worried about my life.
Mhm.
Or if I say, what's my partner really needing right now? This person seems frustrated. This person seems like they're really overwhelmed. How could I help them? How could I contribute to them? If you're frustrated and overwhelmed, you're typically not noticing that they're frustrated and overwhelmed. So you're thinking about you and how you could feel better. Or you notice they're frustrated and overwhelmed and you're upset by that.
Mhm.
And then that's making both of you more frustrated and overwhelmed.
Mhm.
And so by you taking care of you, by putting that oxygen mask on you first, oxygen is like spiritual. So love is like spiritual oxygen.
Mhm.
By loving you, you put the mask on you. Now you become in the best state possible to be able to help as many people as possible.
Awesome. There's a last thing I want to talk about before I guess we end this because you kind of went into every possible way that one could experience, understand self-love. I'm sure you can say it in my other ways too, but just go back to it. The last point I wanted to make, and I want your thoughts on it too, obviously, is one of the things I have learned once I started learning to love myself, then I stopped needing anyone else. And also, same thing, that being afraid of losing somebody. Because at that point, I found it's infinite. Love is infinite. I can love somebody and still let them go, right? And I've done it, you know, in a certain instance, I've done it without feeling that, oh, I'm broken. Oh, they left me or whatever, they're not no longer with me. It didn't matter at that point. I think that's one of the things people miss about self-love is, or even love, for example, or in that instance, is thinking that, loving somebody means if they leave you or whatever reason, it might be bad breakup, good breakup, whatever it is, right? Somehow they kind of should stop loving them. No, you can still love them and let them go because you're enough. You love yourself and they are you. So that's something I feel like most people or many people don't get that. They live in the world of, I'm not saying I'm immune to that. There's bouts of it still happens, right? And then remind myself, oh, wait, what am I, why am I going there? I know this better than that, right? So what are your thoughts on it? I know you'll have way better thoughts than what I was sharing. So I'm going to let you go on that one.
The first part I want to just remind people of is when I say in the beginning, there's I and there's me. In the context of the physical universe, I'm both of those things. So I'm not saying like ego is bad. I'm not saying in my situation that Jamil is not who I really am. Like I'm both. I'm spirit and I'm Jamil. It depends on, it's like when you look at a microscope, if you look at something at 5x magnification and then you look at it at 50x magnification, if I ask you which one is the right one, it's a weird question. It doesn't make sense because they're both the right one. It just depends on what you're going for. Like, how deep do you want to see this thing? In that same way, in the context of the relative reality, the physical universe, I am Jamil and that is real.
Mhm.
And in the context of absolute reality, I am spirit and Jamil's an illusion. And so both are true at the same time. So now, with that in mind, in this human experience, the reason why I think self-love is so important, why I call it the ultimate form of spirituality, is you're going to have a human experience. And so that human experience is going to include a felt experience of loss. It's going to include sadness. It's going to include pain. It's going to include suffering. It's going to include all of these things. And I encourage you to allow yourself to feel those things. Don't make them bad. Don't make them wrong. Don't try to bypass them. Whether you call it emotional bypassing, spiritual bypassing, like whatever it is, don't try to delude yourself into thinking you're not supposed to feel those things.
Mm.
You're a human being, and that's going to happen occasionally. I remember one of my mentors, he was at a meal with the Dalai Lama and a bunch of other people. This is like 40 years ago, 30 years ago. And there was a part where my mentor was sitting right to the Dalai Lama's right. And the guy across the table says, Your Holiness, what do you do when you get angry? Thinking that like he doesn't get angry, he's the Dalai Lama. And he says, well, when I get angry, I get angry. And then I let it go. But the idea is like I get angry, I allow myself to fully experience it, process it, release it, and now I'm done. But most of us, we think what we call negative emotions, anger, sadness, fear, hurt, guilt, shame, anxiety, are bad. And it's not like spiritual to feel those things, or it's whatever story we tell ourselves, and you're blocking a whole part of who you are. And
Mhm.
so this is a preface to what you shared.
Mhm.
Let yourself be human, let yourself feel.
Mhm.
And with that in mind, you talked about like in relationship, for example. So
Mhm.
whether a relationship ends, let's say, because either a breakup or because of death or whatever, a divorce, whatever it might be, a friendship ends, there's a distinction I make between love and attachment.
Mhm.
Attachment says, I love you, I need you, don't go. Like you can't leave.
Mhm.
Love says, I love you, therefore I want you to be happy, whatever that means, I'm okay with it.
Mhm.
Now, keep this in mind. That doesn't mean there's not boundaries.
Mhm.
So, love is unconditional. relationships are conditional.
Mhm.
So the reason why we could break up and I can still love you, the reason why our friendship could end and I can still love you, pray for you, wish the best for you, you could have wronged me in a way that in my mind, like I don't want to ever be around you again.
Mhm.
I can still do that from a place of love. And the reason is like what I said before, people aren't their behavior. People can act in really nasty ways. And at the same time, that's because of the state they're in at the time, the way that the world is occurring for them. We said there's 8 billion realities right now, roughly. The reality they're in, that behavior made sense. It
Mhm.
doesn't make sense to you because you're not in that same reality.
Mhm.
And so, with that in mind, relationship is conditional. I am going to be in relationship with you, whether it's a business partnership, an intimate relationship, a friendship,
Mhm.
as long as
Mhm.
there's certain criteria that are met.
Mhm.
I've got certain things and you've got certain things, and as long as we both do that for each other, we're good.
Mhm.
But if we're in business and we're partners and you steal money from the company,
Mhm.
that's not okay. And I'm not going to want to be in business with you because you lied about it and you tried to get away with it, and I can't trust you now. I can still wish you well as we end our business partnership.
Mhm.
I can still pray for you and hope you do well because I said in the beginning, right? Like Sri Ramana Maharshi said, like there are no others.
Mhm.
I know that you're just another aspect of me experiencing this human life. You've got your moments of pain, insecurity, ignorance, and fear, etc.
Mhm.
You acted in the way that you did, and you justified it in some way that made sense to you,
Mhm.
and you tried to make it work.
Mhm.
And just like me, maybe I've done that too at different times in my life in varying degrees. But with that in mind, it's like, okay, given the conditions that I have for this relationship, this isn't going to work for me. It's not loving to me or
Mhm.
to you for me to allow this to continue. If I
Mhm.
feel disrespected, if I feel that you're cheating this relationship, if I feel like you're actively like making things worse for
Mhm.
me, and we've communicated about it and you've lied and you've continued, you're out of integrity, out of commitment. If I stick around, I'm allowing it to continue.
Mhm.
The moment I'm aware, I don't like this, this isn't working for me, we've communicated it, you keep doing it, it's on me now to leave. So I'm going to love myself enough to walk away, but I
Mhm.
can still love you enough, not your behavior, but I
Mhm.
can love your being, your essence, your soul, your life, like whatever you call that, that animating force. I can love that
Mhm.
because I recognize that you wouldn't have acted that way if you were actually grounded in who you really are.
Mhm.
Because in my mind, you don't find people
Mhm.
walking around full of peace, full of love, full of bliss and joy, and they're killing people.
Mhm.
That doesn't happen. And
Mhm.
so the people that are doing that, mentally something's going on, emotionally something's going on. They've been through so much that resentment and anger and whatever else is built up and built up and built up. And now they've got some story about why they have to take a certain action. And they justify it and it makes sense to them and they do it.
Mhm.
It's not because they're a bad person. It's
Mhm.
because of everything that they've been through up until that point. Nobody just gets to that point immediately. It builds up. Just
Yep.
like with the emotion of anger is not bad. There's no
Mhm.
such thing as bad emotion. But when you have anger that you suppress and suppress and suppress, over time it turns into rage. And then
Mhm.
if you keep suppressing it over time, you just explode. And
Yep.
then when you explode, you have this outburst of energy that is so beyond what the moment called for,
Mhm.
and that's when you hit somebody or you say something that you regret, or you say something that you can't take back, or something you do
Mhm.
something that embarrasses yourself, like whatever it is.
Mhm.
So with that in mind, we've got love and we've got attachment. Attachment is coming from this space of I'm not okay without you. I need you. You like, and some people try to make it romantic. You complete me. But that's a problem because with that, and I say that playfully, but it's like, if you complete me, what happens if you leave?
Exactly.
I'm screwed. So I don't come from that space. I come from the space of every one of us is already whole, perfect, and complete. We just don't know that. We
Mhm.
forgot. And so it's love to me is not you don't get into a relationship to get something.
Mhm.
You get into a relationship to give.
Mhm.
Get into a relationship from the mindset of my life's pretty good.
Mhm.
I have a good relationship with me, and I
Mhm.
want to contribute to somebody. I
Mhm.
want to have fun. I want to make somebody else's life richer and more fun and help them make their dreams come true.
Mhm.
But and ideally, if they do that too, now you're both mutually supporting each other and you have a relationship that can last forever and it can be a really healthy relationship.
Mhm.
But if I'm grounded in I need you. I'm not okay without you. Please never leave. What if it's not a good fit for you anymore?
Right.
What if at that point the relationship is becoming pretty toxic for both of us, but we're both sticking around because we're afraid?
Mhm.
What if I don't find anybody else? Think about it like this. If you've ever been in a relationship, business partnership, intimate relationship, could be a friendship, I'm never going to have another friend again. I'm never going to meet another business partner who's as good as this person. I'm never going to find another person who's as good for me as this person in my intimate relationship was. But have you been in a relationship before in any of those contexts that you were happy with for a period of time? Yes. How did you meet the new one unless you let go of the old one?
Right.
And this won't be any different. So there's 8 billion-ish people out there. There's always somebody else. There's always somebody else that could come in. But I say that simultaneously honoring what you have right now and what was. So this relationship and whatever the context it is could be amazing. And I don't believe in mistakes. And so I believe that you and that person came together for a reason. There
Mhm.
was some aspect of growth, of learning. Sometimes you only grow and learn from really painful things.
Mhm.
I think it's Bill Gates. I think it's him. It's a quote. It's something like your worst, your worst teachers are your successes.
Mhm.
Your best teachers are your failures.
Failures,
And so in that same kind of way, you might be in a relationship, business, personal, friendship, intimate, whatever, and it was great for a period of time, and then it got really bad, and then you got bitter about it. But if you shifted into love, you could love that person, wish them well, love them, not the behavior. And
Mhm.
then you could come from that space of loving yourself more as well, releasing any of that energy, that tension that you're holding on to,
Mhm.
wish them well, and then step into the rest of your life in the most beautiful way possible. Or you might be in a situation now where it's like it feels like you're in hell. Like your current situation is so bad. And then you hear me say there's no mistakes, and you go, what the hell are you talking about? Because how could this possibly be a good thing? Who are you going to become as a result of being through this experience? It's almost like, I use this metaphor, I haven't used it in a while. It's the sharpest sword in the land. And the idea that you're the sword
Mhm.
and you're dull and you're in like whatever swords are encased in. I don't mean like a sheath. I mean like you're in like a big bundle of them.
Mhm.
And the blacksmith is there and you could talk. And as a sword, you say to the blacksmith, I want to be the sharpest sword in the land.
Mhm.
And the blacksmith says, you sure about that? Because the blacksmith knows what that entails, but you don't. You just see the outcome and you go, yeah, I'm so sure I want that more than anything. And the blacksmith goes, okay, cool. And he picks you up and you're like, oh boy, I'm going to be the sharpest sword. And then he walks you over one of those like stone wheels that you see in like Game of Thrones or in the movies. And he starts rolling it. And you go, what are you doing? And then he grabs you and he like sticks you towards the rock. And it's like a spark. And if
Mhm.
you talk, you're like, ow. And it hurts.
Mhm.
And you're like, what are you doing? And he keeps doing it. Ow, ow, ow. And you're like, why are you hurting me? And the blacksmith says, you said you want to be the sharpest sword in the land. I have to sharpen you. And so, from a human metaphor, you become sharpened by going through adversity. You become sharpened by being challenged. You become sharpened by metaphorically having your heart broken
Mhm.
and then loving anyway.
Mhm.
It's who you become as a result that makes you quote unquote better for the future. It's almost like saying there's a life that you want to live,
Mhm.
but the version of you that you are now can't have that life because you're not good enough yet to have that. But
Yep.
notice the distinction. It's not that you're not good enough as like a soul. It's you don't have the skill set, you don't have the experience, you don't have the intellectual like wisdom, you don't have any of that yet because you're not there yet. You're early on in the journey. Using an alphabet metaphor, you're at D and you need to get to Z. So life's going to take you through the process. You're going to meet people along the way that screw you over. You're going to meet people along the way that really help you. You're going to have experiences of the highest joys and you're going to have experiences of the lowest depressions and sadness.
Mhm.
But everything is a tool, a mirror reflection for you of essentially, at the barest bone way of saying it, how can I use this experience as an opportunity to love more?
Mhm.
How can I use this opportunity as an experience, or how can I use this experience as an opportunity to both love myself more and love others more? You watch a movie, the best movies that society has deemed like the classics,
Mhm.
especially the ones that are either fantasy movies or even a nonfiction, you hear the story, like the hero's journey, you hear the arc. of where they are in the beginning, and you see how low they fall, and then you see like the worst things happening to them, but then you see them like rise up and overcome it, and who they become at the end is so beautiful, and we celebrate that. But that's exactly what's happening in your life, and you're complaining about it.
Mhm.
It's like your life is not supposed to be a flat line. It's called death on
Mhm.
like an EKG monitor, right? For the heart. Your life is going to have its highs and its lows. But the idea is if you learn from the lows, then you have higher highs and the lows aren't as low. And so your life gets better and better over time. And so all that being said, I honor and respect everyone listening. I don't pretend to understand what you're going through because we all live in different realities. And I know that, like me and like everybody else listening, you've got some challenging things that you're going through now, some challenging things that you've been through and overcome, and you've got some challenging things that are on their way. But that's called being human. Now, the question isn't how do you stop challenging things from happening? They
Mhm.
never do. The
Mhm.
question is how can you become so resilient, so competent, so full of love that you can meet those challenges with as much grace as possible for
Mhm.
yourself and others? When you meet those, who you become at the end of that life, the level of wisdom, the level of heart, the level of depth and presence, it's so wonderful, so beautiful. But you had to have gone through those things to get there. And so there's love and attachment. Attachment is always an illusion. You're buying into the story that you need something, that you're not okay, that you're incomplete without it, whether it's an object, a person, or whatever. And once you can recognize it's not true, I'm going to choose love. I'm not with you because I need you. I'm with you because I choose you. I'm with you because I want to be with you. And if something happens along the way where that does not make sense anymore for either of us, can we love each other enough to let go? And can we let go with grace? And can we let go with well wishes for each other? That I'm not saying that's easy, but it is that simple. And
Mhm.
if you come from that space, that's the way I think about love, attachment, relationship in any context, and how it can relate to our conversation.
Awesome. We'll end it there. And I wanted to say, since you were in the flow, I didn't want to say stop you there. Uh, yeah, you're right. One of the things I've learned is I don't stop any emotions. I experience them fully. I've learned that now. Like even there are times when you might be completely out of it a whole day. Just don't resist it. Just experience it. It's the day. Your soul is experiencing. So that's a whole different part. One of the things I've learned is my soul is experiencing different emotions. It's all good. Enjoy it, right? You might not get it another time. So just experience it. Don't resist it. Don't make yourself wrong. So we can get into another podcast probably on that. But with that, let's end it there. And again, really great conversation, Dr. Jamil. I would say listen to this a couple of times. There are different parts. I would say listen to it depending on where you are, I think, in your journey. That might help you, right? So I hope this will help people just like and I don't forget the commitment one. I say go look at it. If you haven't listened to the commitment one, go listen to that one and the spiritual one, because all these will tie together, essentially, I think, in my opinion. So again, Dr. Jamil, thanks for the conversation again. Great conversation.
Oh, you're so welcome. It's always a pleasure and a privilege to get to be with you, Raju. And I hope that our listeners got something from this. And I know that whenever you and I meet, one of the things I really appreciate is we don't just keep it superficial, we go deep. And the thing is, when you go deeper and there's that depth, it gets to a point where, yes, everything I shared is my opinion, it's my perspective. But it gets to a point, it's like you get closer to the root, you get closer to what seems to be true. And at that point, it's almost like there's less opinion. And when you hear wisdom, you recognize it. Like there's some aspect of you that hears something and goes, that just sounds true. Like that just feels true. I don't know why, but that just feels true. And when you can allow yourself to be open to receive, because some of the things I said might challenge what our listeners believe. It
Mhm.
might not go with whatever paradigm they've got going on. That doesn't mean theirs is wrong and mine is right. It's just an invitation to say, it's like clothes. try on the shirt I'm giving you and see how it fits. You can always put your old shirt back on,
Right.
but try on the shirt and let's see how it looks on you. Let's see how you feel in it. And you might try it on for a second and you might try it on for a week. And you might notice people say, hey, you look really good in that shirt. And that's the equivalent of, hey, I've noticed you've been more present. You've been listening more. You've been a lot more affectionate recently. And that's like what would happen as a result of internalizing, integrating, embodying what we've discussed. And so that's an invitation and a loving challenge that I have for everybody.
Awesome. Well, I'll be posting all his links. If you want to get in a conversation with Dr. Jamil about other things, your business coaching, whatever. And then like I said, this coming Tuesday, what is this? July? I forgot. What is going to be July 20th or something like that, right? I
This
forgot.
coming Tuesday, it's the 23rd, 12 p.m. I'm giving a master class called Communication Mastery. And it's 90 minutes. It's live. You can ask any questions, but you're going to learn how to influence more effectively. You're going to learn how to create the results that you're wanting in your world. You're going to see how do you speak to yourself and others in a way that's creating limitation instead of possibility. And you're going to see how to create the type of relationships and improve the type of relationships that you have and want. And so there's so much more that's going to happen, but that's the big picture of it. And again, if you're alive, if you've got anybody other than you, even including you, if you're alive, this will benefit you.
There you go. Awesome. All right. Thanks again, Dr. Jamil.
Thank you again, brother. Thank you.